Cool. Well, hey, Shelby.
Hey, Dennis.
I'm excited for our 15th episode here of the podcast. So we're here. I'm changing it up a little bit today, which I'm thrilled for. I think this is going to be a fun adjustment. We'll see what we think about it. But we've been looking around in our own communities, other communities, and we have seen questions come up that we think we could maybe answer and provide some additional context, but also we kind of want to invite everybody else to bring their own questions. So when we get to the back end of this, we'll kind of share some resources and ways you can kind of field some questions to us so we can maybe answer them in a upcoming episode. So what do you think about that?
I think that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
real questions from real people is always a great place to start because it's what people are actually living and
Yeah,
experiencing, right?
I,
Like we've
I agree.
done a bunch of podcasts, talked about like how we think about things, philosophies, all that's good and it's important and it's great to like carve out some time to establish your own philosophies, but at the end of the day, like sometimes people just want like I'm in
They
this
want the
thing.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
well, what do I do?
Yeah, well, that was, I think a lot of this has come out of the, a couple episodes back, we talked about kind of what to do after a layoff,
Mm.
and it's like that was one of those kind of moments where people were just, I just need to know what things I could be doing in this moment. So building on that, building on our last few episodes as well, where we kind of got tactical on how to kind of go through change and transition. So I'm going to share a couple of questions that kind of surface to the top with you. Get your thoughts on them, and then I may chime in my own thoughts along the way here as well. But
Mm.
so the first question someone has shared, or in the world of various career sources and channels, is what to do when you you grew out. This person says, I grew to despise my dream job.
Mhm.
How to start over at 35?
Mm.
Any thoughts, advice
Yeah.
for this person?
Yeah. Well, two things that kind of stand out to me about that question. First is grew to despise my dream job. So the grew to implies to me that this was like a slow and steady, like things have been deteriorating over time, which I think is important to think about. And I'll come back to that in
Hmm.
a second. The second word is despise is a very big word. I
Yeah.
know I know a lot of people who dislike their jobs. I know a lot of people who are frustrated in their roles. Um, to despise something,
Yeah, that is a
those
big
are
word.
some deep feelings.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to laugh because I would never wish that on anybody. But to whoever this person is, like if I was sitting right in front of them right now, I would say basically to get to a place of despise over time, I grew to despise, tells me that like it was little things over time that changed. And so
Yep.
do the reverse engineering to try to like identify what are those things that led you to this outcome. Like I off the top of my head, I can imagine, is it because was it your dream job because it was something that you're really passionate about and now like the pressure of your livelihood being tied
Mm.
to that passion? Like I
Yep.
see that a lot in with creative folks, artists, things
Hmm.
where like
Hmm.
someone may have a really clear vision for something, but when you have clients to serve and like
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
income has to be made, often that can create a bit of a rub, which can lead to like resentment, which is sort of a cousin of despise.
Yep.
Uh, so that's like one thing that could be an issue there. I think, really think of like, is it just a bad leader that's been chipping away at you or a toxic culture that's been,
Hmm.
bringing you down over time? My hunch is that in this case, when I hear the phrase grew to despise, if you start to like isolate each of the individual parts of the role, you
Hmm.
might be able to say, like, oh, actually, that specific piece is what's giving me this angst and this feeling of despising my role. And then you can problem solve. Okay, is there a
Yeah.
world you can get into a different type of environment and you can eliminate that factor? Now, if you go through that exercise, you look at all the different things that could be causing that despise, and then you still say, I despise this, then yeah, maybe a full reset is necessary. But more often than not, a true overhaul is not the solution. Like there
Yeah.
is some very acute thing that is leading to this symptom of
Yeah.
despising.
I like this. I love this, like, kind of first, like, let's, again, go back and like reassess it. I'm with you. I think it sounds like something has built up over time. I get a lot of questions around this that's similar to like burnout. Like, how do you deal with burnout? And I think it's in the same thing, right? In a lot of cases, like, you're going, the things that were motivating at one point aren't, but you haven't really given yourself that chance
Mhm.
to step back, breathe, and there's a lot of things companies have that can support that, right? Like, if you're not taking enough, flexible time off, if you have that, or you're not taking enough time off in general, take that time. It's there for a reason. If you're fortunate to have a sabbatical, like even better, right? Where I've actually had a friend who recently did that because they literally were struggling. They're like, I just don't know if I want to be here anymore. And they're like, well, did you know there's a sabbatical for you? I'm like, no, they're just like, we're gonna take it. So gives them some time to get clarity, and kind of like walk through this exercise that you just mentioned. So we also have in Career Sandwich is our kind of change kind of exercise. And I think this kind of fits in that as well, where you can kind of go through what type of change are you kind of looking at needing to make. But I agree. I don't think this person needs to start over at 35. I think they just maybe need to
They
do the
might,
work. But
yeah,
fair enough. Yeah,
yeah,
fair enough. They may. Yeah.
they might end up there. But
Yeah.
before overhauling everything, like break it down and see if
Yeah.
there's, you know, one piece of the puzzle that is causing the angst more than anything else.
Fair enough. I like it. All right. So, second question here. I got laid off from my dream job. My dream job.
Hmm?
Should I solicit job opportunities in my org-wide goodbye letter? It's an
Ooh,
interesting one.
that
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
What advice do you have there?
so this well, first of all, it's a good question. And my answer is not totally black and white. It's not a hard yes, not a hard no.
Mhm.
I would say though, directionally, I would lean towards no, probably not. And I would
Mhm.
redirect that energy to other places. So in the context of if you got laid off, I don't know, obviously know the context of this case, like if this person
Yep.
was just an individual who was let go or part of a broader reorganization. But depending on those circumstances, there's a lot of layers and a lot to consider in terms of like
Mhm.
the rest of the organization's what's the phrase I'm looking for here? Like ability to receive more information at that
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so I all to say, like the moment immediately following a layoff, whether it was like you as an individual being let go or something more broadly, it's just a really tricky time, right? There's a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
emotions flying. There's a lot of people often don't have the full story. They're piecing together piecemeal bits of information, trying to create full stories. It can get really complex. And some companies do it well. Most companies, I'll say the thing, don't. Um,
Don't. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
like, it's just not a moment that I would recommend. You, it's not your best investment. I'll say it that way. If you're
Yeah.
going to
I agree.
advocate for yourself and say, "Hey, I'd be interested in working together," it's just not the strongest stage for you to stand on.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
so I would say probably not.
Mhm.
However, you and I have talked about this, so feel free to chime in with your
Yeah.
thoughts. But I feel like redirecting that energy to more ongoing practices of
Mhm.
saying, hey, I'm open to opportunities, building that brand of like, you can rely on me, I'll do great work. So that when moments like this happen, people more naturally can slot you into other opportunities and they're in
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah, I think no, I think the key word here is like the natural feel, right? Like, the work that you would be doing here, this shouldn't be moment in times. This is stuff that should be constant. This is part of like when we talked about networking, right? Insight in mind, right? Like, so these things, you don't really have to make the ask. You can literally just say something as simple as like, hey, let's stay connected in a few weeks or whatever. And things are going to organically come from that if they're going to. And but that work's not going to be because of that. It's what you did in that moment. It's because it's going to be all the other touch points and moments you and that personal brand and the trust that they have, all the things that kind of equity that you built up over time. This is why it's so important to show up, every day and with your values and because it's for moments when you need to kind of draw from that bucket, and it's not going to be in that one singular moment that that person's going to be like, oh yeah, it's over time. It's brand building, 100% brand building stuff.
yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one. I think it's probably not the right time. I don't think the optics are good. I think and I also think,
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, and maybe this is just my personality, but I would encourage others to sometimes to look forward more than they do look they can than looking behind.
Mhm.
I know what it means to work for a company that you love and especially if it's a dream job like this person indicates and
Mhm.
dream company, but you will be okay. It doesn't really feel that now, and you want to stay kind of connected to that, and you'll do everything in your power to do that in that moment. But in reality, you'll grow more. You'll have a bigger network to kind of leverage and thrive in your career. So I think look forward. Always check your rearview mirrors. It's always good, see what's coming up. Who are those people? What are they doing? Where are they going next? But keep driving your career forward, I think is the best way to deal with it. So
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
my take.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it many times, folks, landing somewhere else and or getting hired back after a layoff, whatever. And I'd say maybe 10% of the time it actually works out in the long run.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in most cases, it just proves to be like a short-term fix.
Yeah.
Everything that you just said. Like, I know the company, I know the product, I can
Hmm.
help impact quickly. Like, I should totally go do that role. And like, it's fear-based decision making, not
Yeah.
like, you know, real
Yeah.
strategic decision making. So,
Yeah. I
generally
know
would
there was
recommend it.
yeah, there's a lot of conversations years ago about like just boomerangs and like how to, and I think this is kind of part of that. It's kind of complicated, right? Especially if you're in this case where you're laid off, it's a very different optic, versus maybe somebody who's left. Maybe there's a better chance of it succeeding as a boomerang, but still, like you said, I never have really seen it really, really work, maybe for a short term, but best to best to kind of move forth, I think.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. But well, before we go to the next question, but I do think, you know, it's also important to remember and acknowledge that time and those people are still
Mm.
in your corner and they still want to probably see you succeed, right? So like doesn't mean you move forward, never talk, wipe them out of your Rolodex or whatever.
Mm.
That's not what we're saying. I think it's build a different relationship with it. Um, but yeah. So third question,
Mhm.
and I think this has come up a lot, especially as we talk with folks in general about kind of leaning in and building personal stories and the power of a story in an interview. A lot of people have asked the question, how much is too much, when it comes to, trying to break through the screen or break through the noise or like be more than a resume, right? However people want to talk about it, like
Mhm.
how much information is too much to share?
Mm. Oh, it's such a big question. Um,
Mhm.
I hear versions of this all the time. I had a conversation yesterday about this exact topic with someone, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe the right way to answer this is actually by rewriting the question a little bit. So rather
Mm,
than like how much is too much, maybe the right question is when is the right moment to share more information. So it's more of a
mhm,
like if we accept or not accept, if we align on this future state, which is we want someone to be their full authentic self at work. That's dream end state, right?
mhm.
So that to me says that the question then becomes like at what point do you start to like open different doors of yourself to like share. And
Yeah.
so, I don't think that on the very first call with a screen for a job interview, you should be like talking about, you know, all your personal details. Obviously, like that's too much too soon. Also, the
Mhm.
screener probably doesn't care, respectfully.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or and it's not their job to care. That's fine. Will your manager and your teammates long term care about,
Mhm.
this big family dream that you guys have, or some cool vacation that you're taking, or the fact that your kid just got a full ride to some college? And like, yes, of course, but there's a time and a place for that stuff. And so
Yep.
I think it's more less about how much is too much, more about what's the right cadence. Like, when do you open up about certain things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always approach and I've thought of it, and I'm a pretty open book person. Like for me, I could just like open up, probably too much, but I do think I always look at these moments as like, okay, the objective here is to get to the next thing,
Mm,
right? And I think if you know that going in, like you'll be able to design and understand what you want to share and how much is too much, right? Like because you're going to know what probably needs to happen to help sell yourself or convince that individual that you're the right person for the next step in this, right? Too many people I think go into that interview and just like I'm going to get it all done right here in this moment, and I personally think that's where it goes wrong because there's like too much information to process, there's too much to document, there's too much noise to filter through, and the valuable stuff
mm,
might have just gotten lost in it, right? So like, kind of um, you know, kind of when you look at other places, and I mean storytelling, we talk about this often, is not a new thing, right? Like it's in so many different spaces and industries. And when you think of like movies launching, they tease this stuff out over months, I mean, sharing early snapshots of what it's going to be like on set and the rumors of what the movie's going to be about, to like here's a small teaser here to here's the next level of a teaser to here's going to be the actors in them. Like all this stuff is to just move us along to the point where they're like, oh, and here's the full trailer drop, and then here's where you can go get tickets, and you're gonna, so like they aren't giving you the whole movie in one moment, right? So I think that's another thing about how you can think about how much is too much. Just tease people along. Think of yourself as like your stories about that nice little trailer that you have a little bit of time to grab them.
mm.
What would you put in that without giving away the full movie? Um,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's exactly right. And it it is very like funny how in line that is with how we talk about the personal career story. It's
mhm,
fun.
mhm.
I always tell people it should be like 90 seconds to 2 minutes max is your
Yeah.
personal career
Yeah.
story when verbalizing it. Like, so
Yeah.
is a movie trailer. I said, and I always say it will never encompass all parts of you. Like, it will never tell your full story. So release that pressure from yourself.
Yeah.
Same with the trailer. Like, the parallels are actually quite funny when you think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. And I think I would even go as far as to say like it takes the pressure off too of like because what when you do too much in the interview, what do you have to lean on when you get the job to lift yourself up and continue to show people you're valuable over time, right? Like, so I think, even letting some of that stuff kind of hang back, for like the day that you can actually like show up to work, let's say you get the job and it's like, okay, here's even more awesome things that, I'm able to accomplish. And here's some other, and you're just constantly proactively designing this kind of launch of yourself, right? If you are the product
Yeah.
to your audience and then ultimately to the folks who are going to be consuming the thing you're giving them, which is the business, it becomes a little easier to answer the question of like, how much is too much? So I don't know.
One other strategy that I want to name here because I do think it's
Mhm.
important. It just came to me. I share this with clients all the time. But you can also put the onus of how much is too much on the person that you're talking to, right? So
Mm,
I do this all the time. If I'm introducing Career Sandwich to folks, I'll
mhm.
say, "Hey, I'm assuming that you know little to nothing about Career Sandwich. Is that a fair statement?" Generally speaking, they'll say, yeah, totally fair statement. And then I'll respond with, okay, great. I'm going to give you the high level of what we do and what we're about. So it'll be pretty brief, but feel free to stop me or interrupt me at any point
Yeah,
if you want me to dig deeper and like share more details. And I'm putting that back on them. And then I go into
I
my
like that.
2 minute spiel. And you can do the same thing with yourself as you're pitching yourself, right? Hey, we're sitting down for an interview. Like, hey, I'm assuming you've got my resume. Like, I know you've got it. You've probably taken a look at it. That
Yep.
said, would it be helpful if I gave you a high level overview of who I am and what I'm about? Most people interviewing are going to say, yes, that would be really helpful. Actually, please do that. And then you can
Yeah,
say basically the same thing like, awesome. I'll keep it really high level because I know we've got a lot to cover. But if there's anything you want me to elaborate on, happy to do so. And then
yeah,
give your
yeah.
trailer, your personal career story, whatever you want to call it, that 90-second to two minute
Yep.
spiel of who you are, what you've done, and where you want to go next. And it's just if you can
Yeah.
grab the beginning of that interview, like grab the beginning of those conversations, it's such a tone setter. It really helps put you in this role of like confidence
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I,
you
I
show
like
up
that.
like in control, but also respectful of someone else's time. You're not
Yeah.
talking about yourself for 45 minutes straight and not giving them a second.
That's what I like about that strategy you shared is because it literally from the very minute it sets us up to becoming a conversation that people are co-creating together versus like, okay, let me just brain dump it all out to you because that's what I think you want me to do in this moment. In reality, they're probably probably like, okay, that's more than I really wanted, but I didn't want to stop you while you were just spewing it all out, because I would have felt rude. So I think if you're someone listening who may really be struggling with that, I would honestly start with Shelby's suggestion there and just get in the habit of just asking somebody, how much do they want to hear in this moment? Because you'll get better to be able to kind of read this and self solve that yourself. But I think that's a great tactical and actionable way to get there. So that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, we were only going to answer 3 questions today, so we'll
Good.
dig deep on a few other ones. But I think it was nice to put you on the hot seat a little bit. But I think I think we're top of mind for the week for folks, and we will. I think we'll capture these, probably store them in the platform per usual. And then if you're listening and you have a question, obviously you can connect with Shelby and myself on LinkedIn, ask us directly. If you're a part of the platform, you can ask a question in the platform. We do a very similar thing. And then in general, let us know what you think of kind of this format and if it's something we should continue to do. Drop a question, comments of this when we post it live. Reply to the BLT. There's so many different ways you can get to us. If you have the question, just feel free to ask, and we'll be there to answer it. If we don't answer it directly, we'll probably just maybe bring it up in a future podcast and answer it live for others to hear. So awesome. Anything else you'd like to add, Shelby?
No, I think this was fun. I like talking about real questions from real
Yep.
people. That's what we're here to do. And I could be in the philosophy clouds until the end of time, but it
Yeah.
was nice to kind of get back on ground level and just talk
Yeah.
about really tactical and practical things that
Yeah.
that folks are thinking about. So thanks for
Yeah, no, there's room for it all, I think. But I'm with you. It's nice I learn a lot just to see how you answer these questions from you. And I know you get the joy of speaking with so many people that it's nice to be able to kind of like bring some of that out to other folks as if it's behind the scenes, right? So,
sure.
um, but also holding true to trusting their space. So awesome. Well, we'll wrap this one up and we will see y'all on the next episode. So that would be the 16th. So awesome.
Yeah.
Later.